Okay, next we want to manage quality, which is the process of translating the plan into executable quality activities that incorporate the organization's quality policies into the project. So we've got to make this a cohesive process in order to make it be fully reflected throughout our project. So the inputs are the project management plan and all of its various subsidiary plans. The other project documents, most notably requirements, because obviously quality is highly tied in, being the conformance to requirements, and our organizational process assets. So the process of managing quality is involved with the tools and techniques, again, data gathering and data analysis, decision making and data representation, audits, obviously, to make sure that we are doing what we say we're going to do, designing for X, where X is the requirement to do some portion of the project. Obviously, we've got to solve problems, and we're going to look at various quality improvement methods that might be applied to the project to improve our ability to do what we say we're going to do in an efficient and effective manner. And what comes out of managed quality are the quality reports, the test and evaluation documents, any change requests, because again, we might have to enlist a preventative or corrective action. Again, project management plan updates if we find requirements that are missing or not well stated, as well as the other project document updates. And again, we have to use our change control process always. Just because we go through a process like project quality management or like managed quality, and then we have an output, that doesn't mean that is necessarily going to be done. It has to go through change control. And finally, we're going to control quality, and that's the process of monitoring and recording results of executing the quality activities to assess performance and recommend necessary changes. So again, those necessary changes don't automatically get applied. They have to go through the change control process, just like any other change.
So it's a monitoring process, whereas the other is executable activities.
Correct. So here we interestingly have our enterprise environmental factors at the top and our organizational process assets at the bottom, and order doesn't really matter. But what goes into the control quality process are the deliverables, the work performance data, and if you notice, when we've got work performance data on one side, we have work performance information on the other side. And of course, we have our project management plan and all of its subsidiaries, and of course, project documents, including the requirements document, and then any approved change requests. So the key word here is approved. And then our tools and techniques are much the same as what we've talked about previously. We gather data, we analyze that data, we inspect the actual products or the results of the process. And again, when we talk about our product, I really mean product, service, or results. So say if your service is an actual service business, so you're answering calls for AT&T, then that's why the call is monitored for quality and assurance purposes. So think about that. Every time you get that message now, you can think about this slide and quality. And again, you've got your testing and product evaluation things that you're going to do, your data representation, and of course you have meetings to figure out what has been done, what can be done, and what can be done in a better way. So again, always about continuous improvement. And so here I want to bring to mind that the word control quality, I always think of control as kind of tamping down. So when you say to somebody, please control your bad children, you mean keep them from running amok. And so here, it's not that you want to tamp down on the quality so much as you just want to have it, you want to understand the cause and effect, that everything you're doing should have an effect, that something just shouldn't happen and think, gee, that was a lucky break that turned out as well as it did or something. So that's what they mean by controlling quality. So what comes out are the quality control measurements. So what has been perceived, what were the measurements taken, now you started with deliverables, and now you have verified deliverables. And of course, we talked about our work performance information, and then any change requests resulting from the need for preventative or corrective actions, and then updates to the documents. So here's a business scenario, so I'll let you read that and see what you think.
Let's see.
Because this always ends with what should you do?
Yep. I'll put the project. Managing the price well because reports consistently not here. Okay. So it was managed and monitored. For $100,000 sold the ignition. Well, we know that this is an external failure, right?
Okay, so what do you think?
Well, we're going to have a recall, I can tell you that.
Yes.
There's going to be a recall on this, and it is considered, an external failure. It was managed. I mean, it says it was managing the project went well because your reports consistently met your quality. So it was managed for quality.
Yeah, well, and I think you're very much on the right track. So obviously there's going to have to be a recall. So even though the project has ended, because remember, our project is a temporary endeavor with a defined start and a defined end. But obviously, if something like this happens where a recall is needed, then the team needs, or some portion of the team needs to be reassembled, and hopefully they are available to be reassembled. Again, to get to the root cause. And so I'd say that, some of the key terminology here is root cause. PMI always wants you to get to the root cause. And we'll talk about the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram later in this chapter. And again, the team needs to move on, both to fix whatever ails it, but also to make sure that on other projects, this same problem or type of problem doesn't fall through the cracks. So it's also a process.
That's a part of knowledge management.
Yes, very much so.
So what exactly would be the answer that they were looking for? Because we know that's, we want to minimize the cost of non-conformance, which is our external failure cost. We know that we're going to have a recall. But the problem is this apparently was managed for quality, so it was monitored. So really, if somebody asked this question as it was asked, what would be the answer that they would specifically be looking for?
Well, on the exam, because it has to be multiple choice and you can't write an essay, they would probably say, what would you do first? And so, or what would be the focus of what you do? And so,
well, a recall, I would definitely want a recall because I want to minimize anybody else purchasing these parts.
So yeah, so assuming that recall was one of the choices, you would probably want to do that. If they were just looking at procedural process things, reassembling the team might be a necessary thing. Getting to the root cause of the failure would certainly be, or if they said what was the most important thing to do, in this process of recalling and what have you, then that would be getting to the root cause, and by using a cause and effect diagram. So again, depending on how the question would be phrased, you would have to discern which of the answers would be best based on what they're asking for. And always make sure, all these questions end up like, what should you do? But make sure that you read especially carefully the last phrase or clause or couple of sentences of the question to make sure you're answering the right thing. So in other words, if they said, what's the most important thing, or, procedurally, what is the most important thing to do, then that would be the root cause analysis. If they asked you, what should you do first, that would be the recall. If they asked you, how would you staff or how would you, work this problem, how would you staff it or something, then that would be reassemble the team. So make sure you're looking at what they are requesting.
Oh, okay. So the first process thing would be the recall, but the procedure would be the root cause assembly of people to discuss why the failure occurred.
Right. So yeah, so depending on what they're, so you have to discern from and usually it's like I said, it's usually right at the end of the question what they're particularly asking for. So you want to make sure that you're zoning in on that and picking that answer. Because you might think, oh, I've got to have a recall, which was your first reaction, and that is right. That's the first thing to do. But they might say, what's the, most important overall procedural thing to do? And then they're looking for root cause analysis.
I need this chart. I'm terrible. I can't create charts, and I'm looking for a chart like this that has 7 blocks. I can't get my Word to do this.
Can you screen cap?
What was that?
Can you capture the screen, hit the print screen key and then drop it into like a PowerPoint or a Word document?
I tried that, but then what happened is I want to change the actual definitions in the boxes. I couldn't do it.
Well, what if you put it into PowerPoint and then you could overlay different words in the box?
Oh, maybe I can do that. I wonder if I can drop it into PowerPoint. Okay.
Yeah,
or
okay. You can pick it up as a picture and drop that into PowerPoint and then use use clear or use white boxes to cover up anything that you don't want to have, like the PMI trademark stuff, because there's nothing trademarked on this page.
But I got to try that because I have a very old system that I haven't updated because I don't like change at times, and it's not good.
Well, and I was going to say, yeah, I've seen a lot of people upset with the beta release of iOS 12. And a friend was saying, on Facebook, if I ask you who you are, it's only because I've lost all my contacts because I had to go back to iOS 11, after a factory reset.
Yep.
So, yeah, so sometimes it's dangerous to take, full disclosure. I think I talked a little bit about my son. He works for Microsoft, and I still disparage Microsoft at every turn. But I always ask him, hey, Microsoft, is doing the regular Tuesday update package. Should I take that? And he's like, wait a while, and he doesn't even work in that part. He works on cloud-based software things, but, always better to be careful.
Yep.
So at any rate, but yeah, that's what I would do. I would do a screen cap. And of course you've got that kind of back thing, which it looks like, to me, it looks like the old timey ink pen, the blue part on the bottom with wearing a graduation cap, but I think it's supposed to be legs. But feet or something. But anyways, but what you might want to do is just try to use white boxes and white shapes to cover over everything you don't want, and then just overlay the text in boxes with the background of things you do want. So
I'll try that. Okay.
So here are the seven basic quality tools. First, we've got control charts, and again, this is for a fairly repetitive process. So remember, a lot of these total quality management things came out of manufacturing in Japan in the 40s and 50s. And so initially it was set on manufacturing where you do millions, hence the Lean Six Sigma, 3 or 4 bad parts out of a million events. You're never going to have that in most processes, most regular processes. You're probably not going to do a million retractable roofs, as nice as that would be, and as big of a payday as that would probably be for you. But you're not going to do a million. So you've got to take these, and apply them to other processes, because again, PMI intends this to be, whether it's software, which granted, might run 1,000,000 times. So, you've got to make sure that 100 runs, and say like in a Monte Carlo simulation, that it's still always right. And you've got to, and it might be a service organization again. If you're answering calls for AT&T, you probably deal with 1,000,000 calls and you want them all to be right. So at any rate, the important things to know about control charts are you have an upper control limit, and see, this is that 16.5 number line, and you have a lower control limit, and that's your 16.1 control line, and these are equally spaced. So
Always?
yes, the upper and the lower control limit are always, definitionally equally spaced. And this is usually a 1 sigma kind of tolerance. And basically anything above the line is bad, and anything below, above the top line is bad, and anything below the bottom line is bad. But anywhere just in the middle of the chart is okay, even though it kind of looks like my proverbial Charlie Brown shirt designation.
So below the lowest line is bad. Okay.
Below the low line is bad. Above the top line is bad. And just to go a little bit deeper into this, if you haven't been immersed in total quality management, if you have 7 points going in the same direction, so say if this trend, say that wasn't too high, but say if this trend, here's a good trend, if this kept tending down, even if it stayed within the control limits, the fact that you see 7 going in the same direction could be back to my scissors example, that your scissors are getting dull, or if you're doing die cuts or something, that they're getting dull, and so you're getting less and less conformance to requirements, and so that should tell you that something is happening. So and in general, because this is for a manufacturing process, the things should happen on either side of the line with some regularity. So again, it should be this kind of up and down thing. So if you had 7 points on the same side of the midline, that's probably a problem.
So generally, if the values are within the control limit, the project's on track.
Yeah, generally it is, and it's kind of the rule of 7, and just as we have the 7 this is all of this is wrapped up around 7. So we've got the 7 basic quality tools, but basically on control charts, if you see 7 points, either 7 in a row above the line, or 7 in a row below the line, or 7 go in the same direction, even if they're within the limits, that could be a problem. So if there were to be a question asked about, could there be an issue even if all the points are within the control limits? Yeah, there could be. So at any rate, but it's obviously out of tolerance when you go above the upper control limit or below the lower control limit.